Hello there. Welcome for coming back. I'm Bald Bill. This is the podcast of the Lost Songs of Ireland, episode 2. It's my first full proper episode. The first one I did a few days ago or last week was the introduction, just kind of explaining what I'm doing. Today we're going to be dealing with an interesting murder story from the mid-1800s. So I found this ballad looking through the National Folklore Archive. It's about a local hero from the area between Offaly, County Laois, north of North Tipperary, around this area, who shot the agent of a landlord, his landlord. Now, this occurred on Friday, November the 8th, 1858. So 1858 would have been 10 years after the worst of the An Gorta Mór. The worst years of the famine, so a decade after the famine. So in the Midlands of Ireland, would have been very devastated at this time. There are areas in the Midlands of Ireland, the populations of which were absolutely destroyed in the very few years of An Gorta Mór and in the decades afterwards. In North Tipperary, I'm a bit more familiar with than the Laois Offaly area, but I presume it's not much different. There are parishes around where I live in North Tipperary, where the population census data is from the 1840s, 1850s, are 10 times what they are today. So the depopulation of the Midlands, of the rural Midlands in Ireland, was a very big deal. It completely changed the landscape, changed the cultural makeup of these areas. So this murder would have been committed out of anger. A tenant shooting their landlord. There's quite a few incidents of this happening in the country around this time. This particular landlord, he wasn't actually a landlord himself. He went by the name Richard Ealy, who was the agent for a big landlord in that area at the time. I believe the landlords at the time were the Coots. I'm not 100% on that because I found conflicting data that gave me other names, but I'm quite I'm going to go with the Coots, who would have been British English landlords, quite possibly absentee, because at the time it was very dangerous for British English landed gentry to be in what is now the Republic of Ireland, because people hated them. These people were forcing people to work crazy hours, charging extortionate rents to people and evicting them for the simplest things. A very common trick that landlords at the time used was, if a tenant made any improvements to their property, the rent would go up. And if they weren't able to pay the raise in rent, they were then evicted. The tumblers were sent in, the walls were pushed in on these houses, and the roofs burned, so that the tenants could not return to them. That wasn't the case here. The case here is a young lad called Delaney. James Delaney had a hobby of shooting. He was very much into shooting. He kept a gun and a hound, a dog, and I think this was forbidden under penal laws at the time, anti-Catholic apartheid laws that the English brought in to essentially dispossess the Irish Catholics, so they couldn't own businesses, they couldn't practice their own religions, they couldn't speak their own languages, or these kinds of things. Very, very, very oppressive laws, the penal laws were. So being a Catholic, living in the Midlands in the 1850s, late 1850s, would have been a very difficult life. Simple things like there's tens of thousands of people that were exported to Australia for breaking penal laws, and breaking penal laws could be very, very trivial things. There are people that were sent away for stealing half an ear of corn from their landlord while their families were starving. If you were caught doing that, sent to Australia. There was plenty of other things as well, that just make no sense to us today. That we wouldn't even think of them as crimes. There were songs. There were specific songs, like on Roshin Du. Um, any laments about islands, any songs, um, lamenting the state of the country or anything like that was also illegal. That could earn you a ticket to Australia, to a penal colony. Um, yeah, it was very difficult to be a peasant in Catholic Ireland in the 1800s. So it's not surprising that a lot of these lads just had enough and then just, picked up the gun and did what they saw was the only thing that they could do. So this murder occurred on Friday, November the 8th, 1858. Richard Ealy is the name of this agent. He had previously admonished Delaney's son, who I believe was also James Delaney, about hunting with his hound and with his gun, saying that this wasn't on. You couldn't do this. This was against the rules. And he called an emergency meeting of all of his tenants. Upon hearing this news, demanded that every household were to pay their rent now. In kind of an effort for the landlord just to make life difficult for the tenants. Now, the reason for this actually, there was a reason landlords were evicting people at this stage. It wasn't just to be bastards, although they were, the vast majority were absolute bastards. At this time, there was a change in agricultural policy in Ireland. As I mentioned in the last podcast, for the early part of the 1800s, Ireland was a breadbasket. Its purpose for the British Empire was to grow grain for the English people and for their armies. This changed in the 40s, which precipitated a lot of the conditions that caused An Mhor. Agricultural policy shifted away from arable crops to pasture land. So you had huge areas of the country, in particular the Midlands, that were being cleared, completely cleared for open pasture. We wanted cows growing in Ireland, and we've had cows, milk, dairy, beef has been one of our key exports ever since. So these things last. These sort of agricultural changes are very, very big, very profoundly important at the time, and they still are. So Delaney's landlord, Richard, the Coots, were putting up rent for whatever reason. They wanted people off of their lands, the same as all of the others. So they'd send these agents to just cause trouble, really, to make life as difficult as possible for their tenants and to find any reason to evict them. And that's exactly what this Richard Ealy was doing. He was trying to cause trouble for the Delaneys. Now, Ealy himself lived in a town called Ballamore, Ballagh, which Oscuelga roughly translates to the big way, the big town. A Balia usually is a crossroads with a small town or a village on it. Back in the 1800s, that could have been a big town. This could have been maybe a few hundred up to 1,000 or two or more people. I don't know. I don't know the specifics of this area, but yeah, Ealy lived in Ballamore, and he was making his way home on this November 8th night, a cold November 8th night, and approaching his gates, a man stopped him and shot him and ran. It turned out later that the assailant was a man called James Delaney, who had for for various reasons had enough of dealing with his land agent, and decided to take things into his own hands. When Delaney was shot, he didn't die instantly. He spent a while bleeding out. Doctors were summoned from Templemore, Nina, and Thurles, I believe. They couldn't save him in time, and he died. He was then buried in Ballamore. I believe he's buried in Ballamore. Now, Jim Delaney himself was a man from a townland called Rossbourne, which what is White Hill, I think. No, White Woods, the White Woods. And he was from a family of revolutionaries. The Delaneys of Rossbourne had already made a big name for themselves. 6 of them were hanged in after the 1798 rebellion. There was an attempt at Rossbourne to capture Cloncourse Castle as part of the 1798 rebellion, which failed, unfortunately. And the 6 brothers of the Delaneys of Rossbourne were then hanged. This would have been 60 years, 60 years before Delaney murdered Rich Ealy. So he would have grown up hearing the stories of 98, hearing the stories of 98. He would have grown up under the shadow of his uncles, his great uncles, who were hanged for taking part in a rebellion. So obviously the Delaneys had a bit of a nationalistic streak to them. I've actually got 2 versions of this song. The first I'm going to play with the guitar. The second I found a man singing it, actually. I found a video on a 20-year-old news article that actually had a video of a man sang a lovely version of this. He's added quite a few verses to it. I don't know if he's added to it or if the song was initially a very much longer song than the versions I've found. But I'll play the guitar version that I've found, and I'll give a bit of a talk about that afterwards, and then I'll finish up with the ballad a cappella. Okay, I hope you enjoy this one. I'm calling it The Shooting of George Ealy. All you jolly Queen's County boys, listen unto me. I hope that these few verses now will fill your hearts with glee. It's all about a young man who lies now in his gore. His name is Richard A. Ealy, and he lies in Ballagmore. Now Ealy, being a tyrant now for many a long year, to man, to woman, and to child, was known to shed a tear, until he met this hero who caused his sad downfall. His name is Jim Delaney, he's the pride of sweet Rossbourne. Now Jim, being a jolly chap, as jolly as can be found, for his own amusement he kept a gun and hound. To be chastised by Ealy, he found it rather strange. The only crime against him was the killing of the game. Now Ealy, being out late at night, returning home to bed, Jim was waiting at the gates, and there he shot him dead. The castle bell began to ring, Ealy he was shot. Police from every barracks, they were there upon the spot. There was doctors there from Thurles, Templemore and Ballinasloe, 'cause in the head he got the lead, now Jim had laid him low. The reward for him was granted, a church and chapel wall. The man that was to take it all was sure to get a haul. He's gone away, I hear them say, you'll never see him no more. The devil has you, Ealy, from the lands of Ballinmore. Okay, that was the ballad of The Shooting of George Ealy. I hope you enjoyed that. There's a bit of... There's no clear answer to what the fate of Jim Delaney was. One thing I can tell you for certain is that he seems to have gotten away with the murder. Jim Delaney was already a murderer. He'd killed a man about 10 years beforehand. I think I think it was about 8, 9, 10 years beforehand. He had killed a man in a bar fight, and he'd served 12 months of hard labour for this. So this is probably the second murder committed by Jim Delaney. Now, Jim Delaney immediately after the murder went on the run. He was sheltered by the people of Rossbourne. The killing of a landlord to the Irish peasantry would not really have been seen as a bad thing as such. In fact, it probably would have been quite celebrated at the time, because these landlords were destroying people's lives, not just the lives of people that were there, but in 1858, everyone would have lost family members, friends to immigration and to starvation during An Gorta Mór. So there's a very little nothing but enmity really and hate towards the landed gentry at the time. So the murder of Ealy was regarded as, a good thing. It was regarded as a heroic deed, and it seems Jim Delaney was given a hero's treatment. There are two theories as to what happened to Jim. The first of which is that he lived amongst the locals, sheltered. He lived as an outlaw, hidden underground, however you want to say it. And it's said that he's buried now in Rossbourne. Another story I've heard is that he managed to emigrate to America. He managed to get on a ship to America. One thing that's certain is the police at the time were desperate to catch this man, absolutely desperate to catch this man. The police were sent down to Rossbourne and stationed there to search for him for quite some time afterwards. It's rumoured that he remained in the town during this period and only came out at night. People would feed him and keep him fed, keep him watered, that kind of thing. We'll never know for sure whether he made it to America or not, or whether he died locally. But one thing's for sure is he did commit this murder, almost certainly committed this murder, and he does seem to have gotten away with it. Now, the other ballad that I have is an a cappella one. I have a recording from an old local newspaper of a man in a pub singing this. This is the other version of this ballad. It's kind of a sequel. It's from the voice of Jim Delaney himself. I've heard the story that this was written by Jim Delaney. Personally, I find that very, very hard to believe. If it was, there'd be some concrete evidence of him settling in America, which I have not been able to find. If anybody listening to this does have any links to Delaney's of Rossbourne that emigrated to the States, it would be fantastic to make that connection. Everyone that left Ireland in the 1800s, they went somewhere. Many of them started families, so it's very, very possible that there are descendants of Jim Delaney over in America if he did make it that far. Anyway, I'll finish up this last song. It's an a cappella one. It's been collected. It's a bit of a long one, so I'll finish up with this. And thank you very, very much for tuning in. This is the Lost Songs of Ireland podcast. I'm Bald Bill O'Brien. You can find me on Instagram, Bald Bill, BAULDBILL. I'm also going to set up a Patreon quite soon. It's in the process at the moment. Hopefully for the next podcast, I'll have that ready for you. Supporting content creators and supporting independent podcasters is very, very important. This is a new medium. It's a new medium. There's still finding its feet. There's a lot of ways this medium can be used, and unless people are supported in that, you're never going to see the best podcasts. So thank you very, very much for tuning in. I will be back sporadically. I think I'm going to do these episodes sporadically as and when I finish a song, rather than sticking rigidly to an every 2 week structure, because quite honestly I've got a lot to put out, and I want to kind of get it out as quickly as possible, and waiting 2 weeks kind of feels a bit unnecessary. So anyway, I'll finish off with this song. This is the ballad of Jim Delaney. My name is James Delaney, and I take my pen in hand to write to you a line or two that you might understand. For I, being young and light-hearted, and carelessly strolled on, for to amuse myself upon the bog, all with my dog and gun. Until one of those poor craters, George Ealy by name, maliciously he told on me for the killing of the game. And when the landlord heard of this, the tenant he did call, for every man to pay his rent, each man both great and small. Now my father, being the first man who went to pay his rent, he shouted out to Ealy, I'm glad to have you here. For I am told and well informed that much to you I blame, for to allow your son with dog and gun the killing of my game. And I am told and well informed, since you can't hold his tongue, that your son has been daily shooting and hunting with his hound. But well bespoke my father is, a hunting he might be. I swear unto your honor, it is unknown to me. I beg your honor's pardon in what I'm going to say, that I think you are mistaken, entirely led astray. If that be so, Delaney, I'll freely try your case, and I'll produce and alter, I'll bring you face to face. Richard Ealy being called upon to make up this great man, how dare you propose a lie to a worthy gentleman? But when Delaney heard of this, the blood boiled in his veins, to see for satisfaction whate'er might be his case. 'Twas in the tyrant's body he lodged a braced ball, which brought him down unto the ground into his crimson gore, never to rise or tyrannize on the lands of Ballamore. Now there were doctors there, and magistrates, and coroners, I'm told, and over his dead body an inquest they did hold. No blood money could e'er produce my life for to swear in, but from different parts of Ireland came a band of Orange men. Farewell to old Hibernia, likewise the shamrock shore. Farewell unto you, Rossbawn, it's a place I'll see no more. I now must leave my parents, 'twas them I did adore. For the shooting of kite on November's night that flew through Ballamore. Okay, that version was sung by Jackie Moten. Thank you very much. This has been the Lost Songs of Ireland. I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.